Hello, can somebody hear me?
Yes, you can. I can hear you.
Okay, just a moment. I'm
Okay.
trying to set up. Okay, please, can you confirm that you are still seeing my screen?
Yes,
My,
I can
my,
see your
my,
screen.
what, the thing I'm
Yes.
sharing, is it still sharing?
Yes.
Okay, I want to be sure that it's still sharing. All right, so today, good evening, first of all, and welcome to our advanced tax class. Um, Today is supposed to be a second lecture day, but for unforeseen circumstances, today happens to be the first lecture day. Okay, so today we'll be looking at chapter 23 of our study pack, Advanced Taxation Study Pack, which is Tax Practice Management. Now, one thing I will ask everyone to do is that we should have the current ICAN study pack, because that will be our principal material that we'll be using. The reason is this: ICAN, in their Pathfinder, they will always recommend that you study ICAN study pack and their Pathfinder. And so sometimes too they bring questions in their Pathfinder and study pack. So we'll be making extensive use of these. All right. Another thing I will be letting you know is that before the next class, I will be letting you know the topic we will be treating. Unlike today, that we did not.
Recording in progress.
Just a moment. Okay, so sorry about that. Unlike today, which we did not know the topic before we started taking it, from the next class, we'll be getting to know the topic before it is being discussed. So today is a non-calculation class day, and it's a way to start up our advanced taxation, because many of us we understand what is tax practice, and a few of us, if possible, may want to go into tax practice. Now, we are going to be looking at tax practice either as a consultant, that is a practitioner, or as a practitioner for government, that is a tax administrator. Look at some of the contexts. We'll look at legal requirements for professional accountants in practice. We'll look at the client and engagement acceptance communication with clients, client and engagement acceptance communication with authorities, client and engagement acceptance communication with other stakeholders, client and engagement acceptance, client documentation and record, and the risk of running a professional tax practice. benefits of running a professional tax practice, submission of letter of objection via electronic and physical means, and the role of technology in running a contemporary tax practice. We also look at the tax authorities code of ethics, confidentiality, conflict of interest. So we have a whole bumper package ahead of us. Now, if you have any question at any time, I would ask you to put up your hand in the raise hand feature so that you will ask your question. You may wish to use the voice to ask your question, then you unmute, then you mute back to avoid distraction. The recording of this class will be sent to you. So, in case you miss anything, just know that you will get the recording, and questions about what I said previously, which you missed, may not really make good sense because you are going to be listening to it again at your spare time. Now we go to the uh, introduction. Now, tax practice involves majorly three kinds of services. We have planning services and advocacy. Now, we are going to be looking at what are these kinds of services? What does compliance entails? What does planning entails? And what will a tax practitioner do when there is a dispute and he has to become an advocate? A tax professional or a professional tax consultant can handle either one of these service or more, or even all of these services. So he should handle any of the services where he could demonstrate a high level of professionalism and competence. What are the legal requirements for setting up an accounting practice? In line with the Professional Code of Conduct, which is issued by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, a chartered accountant in practice should not engage in any business, occupation, or activity that will hinder him from giving objective reports, or that will impair his integrity, or that will rub or smear on the good reputation of the profession. So it means that while as a professional accountant is someone who is open for business as an accountant. Now, you could be an auditor, that is where you are called accountants in practice. You could be a tax consultant, that is called accountant in tax practice. Then you could be an industry accountant. That means you work for a company, you are called accountant in business. So majorly now, this is dealing with accountants in practice. And now specifically, we'll be talking about taxation practice, and we will also look at audit practice because they share some common boundaries. Now, as a professional student, you are past the skills level. Now, for you to have passed the skills level, it means that most times your question will be on advice. Write a report. It is not about skills, whether you can compute tax liability or whether you can compute capital allowance. This is for skills level. Yes, while these are still going to be tested, you will also be adding write a report. Sometimes they'll just tell you advice, and in the course of your advising, you are going to show your skills in calculation. Now, these are the legal requirements for you to open an accounting office. You must not engage in any occupation that will mar your integrity and your objectivity. Now, when you have opened your professional practice office, now we said that there are three kinds of services here. We mentioned compliance, planning, and advocacy. Before you can carry out these, you must first of all engage with your clients. Now, clients and engagement acceptance. You need to communicate with your clients. That means that you need to first of all get to know who your clients will be. That means everybody whom you are likely to have business is a potential client. Now, how do you get a client to work for you? The same kind of question is being asked. How do you get who should be your employer? So before you become an employee to a company, what do? You look out what this company, you look up what the company is, what they are doing. Is it the kind of place you want to work? Then what next do? You look out for opening of maybe the the job specification and the kind of job um, role that they are looking for, and if you fit, you send in your CV and a cover letter. Now, this cover letter is like a proposal to the organization that should they hire you, you are going to give them your best and all that. You're available for interview and all of that. Now, you are kind of, will I say, wooing the client. You are trying to sell yourself so that the client can, you know, look your way and hire you or invite you for interview. Now, the same kind of thing here, as a professional, you need to get who your clients will be. So that means there must be a communication relating to appointment and acceptance to act as a tax consultant. That means you must have shown them your resume, must have shown them that you are capable of doing the job, and they would have talked with you and interviewed you and say, okay, you will act as a tax consultant. Now, there are two types of clients you may want to talk with. One of them is the individual taxpayer, and the second one is the corporate taxpayer. So, who are individual taxpayer? These are people who are representing themselves in the payment of tax. Let's say, for example, you are a petty trader, you are an individual taxpayer. You are a salary earner, you are an individual taxpayer. You um you run a small petty business, you are an individual taxpayer. Now, who are corporate taxpayers? These are companies, most especially limited liability companies and public limited companies. So LTD and PLC are the people we refer to as corporate taxpayers. Now, the corporate taxpayers file returns, tax returns to the Federal Inland Revenue Service, while the individual taxpayer, which include business names, ventures, uh, enterprises, they file their tax returns to the state internal revenue. Therefore, it is important that when you are appointing a tax consultant, or when you are offering to be a tax consultant, the client should specify the scope of the assignment letter. All right. So we'll specify the scope of the assignment in the letter of engagement. Now, the tax consultant must be guided in accepting any job and understand that their obligations as tax agents includes liaising between the client, tax authority, and third parties. Okay, in this class, I'm going to show you also a practical example of these kind of engagements. Okay, all right. So the first one is appointment of a tax consultant. This appointment as a tax consultant is like your letter of appointment. Just imagine an accountant who got interviewed. He passed the first interview, second interview, and perhaps the third interview, and he is hired. And so he is now appointed as the tax consultant. Now, this is the same thing with a company. Your firm is a firm of chartered accountants or tax consultants. There must be an appointment. This is a legal requirement. Now, appointment of a tax consultant is usually communicated in the form of a letter from the client to the tax consultant. Following this, the tax consultant will then issue a letter of engagement to the client, spelling out the terms of agreement, including the scope of work, deliverable, fees, and payment terms. So you see here, most times when a client is appointing a tax consultant, he or she or the company will just write, I hereby appoint you as the tax consultant. You will be serving as consultant for so and so period of time, and this is what you are going to do. It is now the tax consultant's job to now spell out the scope of the work he is undertaking to do. And that kinds of becomes an acceptance letter if that scope of work is being agreed. Now look at the example here. I will show you also a practical example. Letter of appointment as tax consultant. Now imagine that there is a letterhead. The letterhead is written here, and we have the managing partner XYZ Consultants. So it is DOB that is writing this letter. The managing partner XYZ Consultants, Marble House, 5th floor, 23 Broad Street, Lagos. Now said, dear sir, appointment as tax consultants. We refer to the discussion held recently with our directors on tax and related matters. We hereby confirm that management has approved your firm's appointment as tax consultant to our company with immediate effect. Please note that the services to be rendered include tax matters of employees, directors, and the company. You are to please liaise with our financial controller, who will provide you with all necessary information and financial statements to record which you might require in the course of carrying out the assignment. We propose a meeting with you for Thursday, April 28, 2018 by 2 p.m. at our Sulurele head office to finalize the details. We look forward to a mutually beneficial business relationship between our company and your organization. Now, for yours faithfully for DMB Nigeria Limited, this is the person who signed. All right, so this is an example of a letter of a appointment. I will show you a practical example of a letter of appointment, which just a moment, I'm trying to dig it out. Okay, just a moment. Oh, that's not it. One moment. Appointment. Okay, I'll need to make this a PDF file. Just a moment. Okay, so this is not in the letterhead, although the letter put it in the letterhead and I can't find that one. This is, you let us see the company. This is dated 29th April 2024. The principal partner, Go Getter Professional Consult. Look at the address. Appointment as tax consultant for Marisha Hotel Limited. We write to appoint Messrs. Go Getter Professional Consult as our tax consultant. This appointment takes effect on April 1, 2024. The scope of the service includes the following: tax planning services, tax compliance service, tax advocacy services, and any other related tax service. The tax type covered in this appointment includes company income tax, education tax, value added tax, personal income tax, capital gains tax, withholding tax, stamp duties, and other taxes that are relevant to the business. The tax services cover the tax services cover taxes payable to the federal government represented by the FRS, the state government represented by the Ondo State Internal Revenue Service, and the local government represented by the Akoko North West Local Government. Should the company relocate to another local government or state or have other branches, this appointment remains valid. The agreed remuneration will be paid on or before the last working day of each month and is subject to review on January 1 of each year or when appropriate. If you accept this offer, please send us an acceptance letter as soon as possible. Yours sincerely, this is the manager, the director, sorry. And it was signed. I can't find the signed copy. All right, so this is an example of the um, appointment as a tax consultant. So you can see here that this course is a practical course. As you can see, practical things applying here. Now, after you have been given the offer letter, which is the appointment, you need to accept. The acceptance of offer is in line with law. when there is an offer, there should be an acceptance. If there is no acceptance, there is no legal obligation binding. So the acceptance of offer as tax consultant to a taxpayer is the indication of the readiness of the tax consultant to render the services requested in the letter. The consultant should, from inception of this engagement, understand the nature and scope of the assignment in order to provide adequate services to the client. Issues that are relating to fees should be fully discussed at the inception of the contract of service. So you see here, sometimes the fees may not be stated in the appointment letter, in the offer letter, for security purpose. A different, letter could detail the fees, but this is an acceptance of this offer. And here is an example. Now, this is going to come from the letterhead of the tax consultant. Remember, it was addressed to managing partner XYZ, who wrote it, DOB Nigeria. Now, in accepting, the XYZ consultant is now writing to the managing director, DOB Nigeria Limited, 4 Brand Road, Surulere, Lagos. Acceptance of offer as tax consultant. Your letter dated April 23 on the above subject matter refers. We confirm our acceptance of your offer to act as tax consultant for your organization. From the contents of your offer letter, we understand that we shall provide tax-related advisory services to your company, its directors, as well as its employees. We will also represent your interests with the relevant tax authority from time to time. We shall be pleased to meet with you as scheduled. Yours faithfully, look at these people. Now, let me give you an example of acceptance. Okay. All right. This is an acceptance letter written by Go Getter Professional Consult, dated April 30th, to the director, Marisha Hotel Limited. This is the address in Ondo State. Dear sir, acceptance as a tax consultant for Marisha Hotel Limited. We wish to accept your offer to serve as tax consultant for your company with effect from April 1, 2024, as stated in your letter. We also accept the scope of service detailed in the offer letter. We shall work with your management and staff to ensure that the correct tax position for your company is obtained and maintained at all times. Thank you for the opportunity to work with your firm. Yours faithfully, that's me. And this is not the signed copy. Okay, there is one that is being signed. So that's how we write an acceptance letter. So when there is an offer and an acceptance, it is legally binding. So that is the legal part has been, taken care of. The next thing that should be done is introduction of the tax consultant to the tax authorities. Now, I want you to be looking at this now. Let's assume that a person who comes to serve as an accountant for a company, right? He was given an appointment letter. He was told to accept the appointment, and now he's been appointed and he has accepted. as the accountant, you know, the company will introduce the accountant to their bank and say, please, oh, this my accountant will be transacting business with your bank on my behalf. So if you see him, give him the needed assistance from the company as a company representative. That is the same thing that you are doing to the tax authorities. Once the acceptance offer has been made, the tax consultant should be introduced formally to the tax authorities. This is done with a letter. So let's take, for example, Go Getter is being consulting for a, a hotel in Ondo State. Go Getter has accepted the offer. The hotel should write two letters. One of them is to the Federal Inland Revenue, stating that they have a tax consultant. The second will be to the State Internal Revenue, telling them too that they are having a tax consultant. Now, do you see that because he's going to be dealing with these two tax representatives, one of them for the company, the other one for individual, there should be an introduction to these two. Now, look at an example here. Dated May 7, 2018, the tax controller. So you can see here is tax controller that is being used, that is used in FIRS. The tax controller, that is the highest ranking person in the FIRS office. I want you to be taking note of these terminologies. Now, the tax controller, Federal Inland Revenue Service. So you don't need to come and just say FIRS. No, state it completely. You can put the FIRS in brackets. Now, because the company is located in Surulere, also the tax office is also in Surulere. It doesn't matter where the tax office is. Like as in the case of Go Getter and Marisha Hotel, Go Getter is in Lagos, Marisha Hotel is in Ondo State. But in this case now, because the taxpayer, the company, is in Surulere, the office of the Federal Inland Revenue closest to the tax office, no, to the taxpayer, is where he should go. And so there is Surulere Micro and Small Tax Office. It's also called Surulere MSTO. That MSTO means Micro and Small Tax Office. Now this is the address and this is Lagos. Appointment as tax consultant. This is to inform you that we have appointed XYZ Chartered Accountant as our tax consultant. Their office is located at Marble House, 5th floor, 23 Broad Street, Lagos. The firm has been authorized to represent our company with respect to our tax matters in your office. Kindly extend to them your usual cooperation and support. And this is signed by the company's managing director. So the first leg of the introduction has been done. Now, the second leg is going to be done now. Okay, the managing partners, okay, they are copying the managing partners because as you are sending it to the tax authority, a copy is being given to the tax consultant. So that means they now know that you have sent a letter to the tax authority. Now, one thing is this, it is better you take the letters. Maybe you take a letter and a, what do they call that again? Um, a duplicate copy to the tax authority so that they can stamp it So that gets more weight. So even though you know you can send it to via email and all that, when you have done that, it's still better to take this letter to the tax authority, let them have it stamped. So if you have two photocopies, let them have it stamped. You can even say two originals so that they can stamp it, sign. You take one of them to the tax consultant for his record, and you keep one of them as your own record, showing that this letter had gone to the tax authorities. So this is the second one to the state. So because it is a Lagos state, it went to the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service. So now, head of station. So this is different from the tax controller. For the state internal revenue is the head of station, Lagos State Internal Revenue Service. They don't have MSTO and all that. So the MSTOs are reserved for the Federal Inland Revenue, right? Now, this is Lagos State Internal Revenue, Surulere Tax Office. So the same principle applies. The tax office closest to where? The taxpayer. Their appointment as tax consultant, and the whole thing that was stated in the one for the FIRS is still written down here. The only difference is the address it is the person it is addressed to, and the office it is addressed, and their designation. That's the only thing. All right. So said note, a similar letter of introduction should be written to each of the state's internal revenue in Nigeria where the company have branches. So it means that if the company have a branch in Lagos, this is one here. He has a branch in Abuja. He has another branch in Edo State. They should write the this one that is addressed to the state internal revenue, but you will replace it with the state. The one for the federal is just one because there is just one FIRS. Whereas the state, every branch where you have your branches, any state where you have your branches, this should go. All right. Now that you have uh, introduced the tax consultant with the tax authority, now the tax consultant begins to work because now there is a formal communication that the tax consultant is representing the company. Now the tax authority will now rely on the document provided by the taxpayer through the tax consultant in determining the tax liabilities. So it means that the tax consultant now will start working. First of all, like in today's modern practice, because he's been introduced to the tax authorities, the tax authorities will give the tax consultant a, a consultant login on Tax Pro Max or on the state internal revenue platform so that they can log in on behalf of the client. Sometimes too, the taxpayer may give the tax consultant his own login so that he can log in and act on his behalf. So the tax authority, the tax consultant also should be introduced to bankers, landlords, other suppliers. Just as they introduce auditors to these people, the tax authority, the tax consultant also should be introduced because the tax consultant will rely on information from banks. Of course, the bank will show how much you received and which will be used to compute your revenue. So you see, the auditors will use that, or the accountant or the tax practitioner will use information from the bank to determine your revenue, your insurance, your landlord. If there's a landlord and you are paying rent, it will be used to determine your withholding tax, tenants, and all that. There are other taxes that are involving landlords, tenants, to calculate, help you to calculate allowable expenses for tax purposes, and all of that. So all of this third party information will be required. Then communication with the tax officials. Now, this is the tax consultant doing the communication, the middle person between the client and the authorities. Now, I'm using Go Getter as an example, and I'm using Marisha Hotel as a client. Marisha Hotel is a client, Go Getter is the consultant, FIRS is the authority. And so, communication with the authorities will now be between Go Getter and FIRS. There will be questionnaires to be filled. You want to get to Tax Pro Max, you need to fill out questionnaires. Some of these questionnaires will be asking you, what is the name of this company? What is the ROC number? What is the date of incorporation? Has the business commenced? If it is, when did it commence? What is the nature of this business? Who are the shareholders? Who are the directors? What are their shares? What are their addresses and phone numbers? These are questionnaires we need to know about the company. Then they will be asking you again, what is your revenue, say in 3 years? What are their revenue, gross revenue? What are their gross profit? What is their net profit? What is their accessible? The most important thing now is revenue, accessible profit, capital allowance claimed, taxable profits. I've highlighted three things here now: revenue, accessible profit, taxable profit. In this order, revenue comes first, accessible profit comes next, taxable profit comes third. Then fourth will be your tax liability. For these 3 years, they'll be giving you standard questionnaires. This time around, it is being done online, even though sometimes too you will still see hard copy questionnaires being filled out by taxpayers or their representative. Now, when all these questionnaires has been filled out, sometimes you apply for TIN, apply for VAT, apply for Tax Pro Max update. All these are done with letters, questionnaires. Yeah, you are giving your TIN, you are giving your VAT certificate, you are giving your Tax Pro Max login. The next thing that comes is filing of tax returns within the time limit provided by the law. Now, for the FIRS, basically, there are two kinds of taxes you may be doing on a regular basis. One of them is the value added tax. And the value added tax is done on or before the 21st day of the month following the month where transactions took place. So it means that 21st of July will be a Sunday. That will be the due date for filing taxes on transactions made in June. And if you are dealing with companies, you did some transactions with companies and you withheld some of their taxes, you also file it using your FIRS Tax Promax login. So withholding tax collected from companies, value added tax will go to Tax Promax and to the Federal Inland Revenue. Now for company income tax, that's also another tax that should be filed within the time frame. So it means that for companies that had their accounting year end in December 31st, 2023, as at 30th June 2024, which is like 4 days ago, they would have filed their company income tax returns. If they don't do it and it enters into July 1, they will pay penalty. So sometimes, the tax authorities will allow you to even file even in July 1 or not even before 12 noon. And when it goes above 12 noon, penalty starts accruing. So because you need to file within the time limit provided by the law. And who is doing this filing? It is the tax consultant. And so it means that you should not be found wanting as a tax consultant in filing taxes late. Let it be that if a tax is filed late, the fault is not from you. That means you are doing your job. Then the next one here is assessment, self-assessment and objections to best of judgment assessment. So these are communications. They give the company best of judgment, or you are the one who provide a self-assessment. So it means that when you are filing your VAT or you are filing your company income tax, you are the one who is affirming that the revenue stated in these returns is true. You are the one assessing yourself. Nobody comes to your office to come and look at your books. You are the one who say, based on the transactions I received, this is the revenue I'm declaring. This is the expenses I am declaring. This is the assessable profit. This is the taxable profit. And this is the tax I am going to pay. So for you to say you are going to pay, you are assessing yourself. It is called self-assessment. Now, when you fail as a taxpayer to assess yourself as to the kind of tax you are going to pay, and the time limit for that assessment is passed, you give the tax authorities no choice than to sit down and decide how to assess you. They will now look at it and say, okay, you are operating a hotel. They don't know how many rooms the hotel is. Maybe you have maybe 10 to 15 rooms. They will on their own and say, okay, maybe hotels in this area, in this caliber, are having 20 to 25 rooms. This is the volume of revenue that they may be getting in a day. Multiply it by 7 days or multiply it by 365 days. This is the revenue we're expecting from them. This is their deemed assessable profit. This is their deemed taxable profit. And this is their deemed tax. Now, look at the way I'm saying it. Deemed. When you hear the word deemed, this is assumed. How did they get that assumption? They look at similar companies that are doing the same thing that you are doing, looking at how they file, what they filed for that same period, and they say, okay, if you are in the same axis, these people are bringing this is the average for these companies, so I'll use that for you. This is their best of judgment. They were not there, they didn't see your book, you didn't show them, you didn't declare, but they will give the best of judgment and they will want you to come clean and come and settle and say, oh, this is not the position, this is the true position. Now, this gives rise to tax queries and replies. Now, tax queries come as a result of your self assessment. When you file your self assessment, they look at it and examine it. That is what we call desk audit, or they are calling it desk examination. It's still the desk audit. They will look at your tax filed. They will look at it if there is any material misstatement, if there's any mistake that will adversely affect the tax position. They will look at it if there are tax rules that were contravened. They will now have tax queries. Some of these queries could be, you say that your rent is 1 million. Where is the withholding tax? Provide withholding tax for rent. You say that your withholding taxes was used in reducing your rent or reducing your taxes. Please provide evidence of withholding tax credit note. You say you carry out so and so expenses. Please kindly bring evidence of these expenses made. Provide your bank statement. Let's see your revenue. All of these are queries that will be issued by the tax authority to the taxpayer, and this will be handled by the tax consultant. He will not be the ones to reply. Then we talk about registration with the tax authority. Registration with the tax authority have to be in line with the FIRS and state internal revenue. So when you have been appointed, you must register the company with FIRS and with the state because you are going to be liaising with them. And we said before that you are going to be liaising with them under CITA, PITA, or PPTA. PPTA is for Petroleum Profit Tax. Then when you are going to register, you are going to go with the certified true copy of your CAC document. They will need to see the original for verification. Okay, like today, I went to the FIRS office with a client of mine for the purpose of TIN and registering with the authorities. Before they answer you, they want to see original of your CAC certificate. So they can even look at the one on the phone. So you may not, this time around, they may not, because of advance in technology, you may not necessarily bring a hard copy, but previously they will need to see the hard copy for verification. You may just bring the original for verification on your phone. Then you can make a copy and submit to them. There will be a formal letter addressed to the head of the relevant authority, and it will state some of these things. Each time you are writing to the tax authority for registration, the name of the company, the registration number, date of incorporation is there, the address. Now, there is a difference between registered address and business address. The difference is that registered address is what is in the document of the CAC. That is the address you use when registering your company. Your business address is where you are operating. So it means that you may register a company in Lagos, but now you are in Abuja. Your registered address is Lagos, business address is in Abuja. Someone may register his company in his using his house address as the registered address. Then later he may expand and go out to open an office. That is his business address. Then there will be the names and addresses of the directors. So you can see here, registered address, business address, names and address of the directors could be the same thing. In the case of somebody who is using his house as the business address and he registered that, these three information will be the same thing. Then name and addresses of the shareholders with their shareholdings. Now, there's a difference between directors and shareholders. Although many companies that are springing up today, the directors are also the shareholders. The shareholders are those that fund the business. These are the people that have shareholding. Directors are those that are managing the business. So you need to state those two. Then any other directorship held by the directors. So that means, let's say for example, um, I am the person who is registering my company. Let's say my company's name is Go Getter Professional Consult. I am a director there. I will also state that I am a director of First Choice Accurate Success Link. That means I have stated my other directorship. The reason is this, so that if it's going to curb arm's length transactions. So if there's any transactions between these two companies, we know that okay, yes, there is a there is a controlling party that is doing that. Precise nature of the business. For example, if you are doing hotel business, or if your business is POS agent, this is precise nature. So some people will now register the company and they will say, I'm a POS agent, I am into general merchandise, I am into general consult and contractor. These are different natures of business. What is the precise one, the major one that you are using it for? That is what they want you to do. In the case of Go Getter, it is a consulting business, a tax and accounting consultant. Now, you have to state whether or not the business has any predecessors is not applicable now. The date of commencement of the business. If you have commenced business, you write the date of commencement. Let's say July 1, 2024. If you have not commenced, you write yet to commence business. This is important because if you have not commenced business, the FRS has no business charging you tax. Then the accounting year end. The accounting year end is when you want to prepare your account too. So it means that most people usually use 31st December. You can put any accounting year that you are comfortable with. Okay? All right. Now, details of the company secretary. That this is where, excuse me, this is where you're using a limited company or PLC. There may be company secretary. But these days, a small company, which is a limited company now, may not have a company secretary. It's allowed. Details of the appointed auditors and tax consultants. Now, if you have appointed any of these, this is where you will now put it. Sometimes a small company may not have appointed auditors as at that time, so you can leave that blank. Now, details of appointed bankers. who are your bankers, maybe it's Zenith Bank, then any other information which may help the tax authority in this regard. Sometimes they may want to ask you for your NIN number. They may want to ask for your BVN. And yes, you may want to ask for these. Now that you have registered your company, this registration is for the purpose of obtaining a tax identification number. Then we have VAT registration. Now, it is the requirement of the law that within 6 months after your company is being incorporated, you must register for VAT. Whether you're a business name or a company, you should register for VAT. This is because even as a business name, you may be dealing with VATable services or goods and services. For example, consulting is a VATable service. So it means that even if Go Getter Professional Consult is not a limited company, it is registered for VAT. It's not only a limited company that's also registered for VAT. Now, a VATable person or VAT agent is required to file application for VAT registration at the nearest FIRS office, and it must go with the CTC, certified true copy of registration documents. So it means that as at when you are writing your letter for registration for TIN, you should also write another letter for registration for VAT. Some people put them together, and so they may be handled together, although it's different offices that will handle it, but they may just mean it on it that the person for VAT should handle that. Okay, now when that is being done, the VAT certificate is issued in the name of the VATable person. Then there is a filing of VAT return of returns. Now, the tax returns, a company in Nigeria must submit relevant information to the tax authority within 6 months of the accounting year end. It means that if your accounting year end is December 31st, within 6 months after the year end, which is within June 30th, you should file returns. And if you are a new company, you may file your first returns within 8 months of incorporation, which means that if you are not in business, maybe your business has not commenced, most likely so business has not commenced, you need to file returns, usually called statement of affairs, within 18 months of your business incorporation. But if your business has commenced, you need to file 6 months after the end of your accounting year end. Now, with respect to personal income tax, an individual must also provide relevant information in the specified format at the beginning of every assessment year. Now, what is the assessment year? The beginning of every assessment year? January of every year. So normally, 31st January 2024, you would have filed your annual returns to the tax authority for Lagos State. Let's say this Lagos State talking about, you must have filed your annual returns. This is a statement of your tax projection, your withholding tax, and every other thing that you are going to submit to the tax authority. This should be done at the beginning of every assessment year. Normally, it's supposed to be done January 1 or so, but the tax authority says you can do it on or before 31st January. Filing of tax returns for individuals and corporate persons are done using the prescribed self-assessment forms with supporting documents. Now, if you're talking about this in the exam, the self-prescribed forms have now been replaced by the online digital website, a Tax Pro Max. What are some of these supporting documents that you will need? Supporting documents could be in the form of your financial statement. Because as you are filling all of these, you are putting figures. They want to see what is used to support it. It has to be financial statement, audited financial statement. Although people also use management account. You know, as a small company that you have not appointed an auditor, you may not be expected to audit your account. So you may end up using a management account and you submit it, and that's it. That's a supporting document. You may also be needed to support it with bank statement. All right. So these are some of the things that you will need to forward to the FRS as tax returns within 18 months of incorporation or 6 months after the end of the accounting year. Signed, audited financial statement together with a covering letter from the tax consultant. Okay, as I said before, management accounts may also suffice, and there will be a covering letter from the tax consultant. Then we have the capital allowances and income tax computation. Now, these may not be separate from the financial statement. The financial statement normally is supposed to be prepared by an auditor. Now, the tax returns is supposed to be prepared by your tax consultant or your tax practitioner. So that is where the capital allowances and income tax computation is being prepared. So most times it is being joined together in the financial statement as one document, but it could be separated. Then the self-assessment form for income and education tax. So the self-assessment form is previously used before 2020. Okay, this is 2021. The ICAN did not update their pack because as at 2020 they were still using, okay, yeah, in 2021 they were still using this income assessor assessment form because Tax Pro Max was effectively used from 2022. So we can excuse them here, but you are submitting these things online. So you will not need to file self-assessment form for income and education tax. You file it online. Automatically, they will be calculating your income tax for you. Your education tax will be calculated. If you are into information technology, that tax will be calculated for you. Your police trust fund will also be calculated for you. Then you have evidence of payment of self-assessment tax computation. Now, I think this is no longer needed because the evidence of payment, when you pay online, a receipt is generated automatically. When you pay in the bank, they also generate a receipt for you. So there's no need to submit evidence of payment because that evidence is also generated to them. So previously, when you went to bank and use your teller to pay, you need to come and submit, or they will have a specific form that you use in paying in the bank. When you fill that form, they'll stamp it and you give them as evidence. But now they'll do a bank printout and it will generate a receipt for you at the FIRS end and sent to your email. Even the bank will even give you a copy. If you are paying online, like what I usually do, I pay my taxes for my clients online. The the evidence of payment is automatically generated after payment. The client's email also gets it, and that's fine. All right. Due date of payment for tax. Payment of income tax is due on the filing date in the case of a lump sum payment, or in the case of installment payment as may be approved by the FIRS, not exceeding 3 installments. In this case, evidence of first installment payment must be submitted along with the tax returns. So it means that if you are making your payment of tax, you must pay your tax on or before the due date. So what does that implies? You may pay your tax. Okay, we look at VAT. You want to file VAT. VAT is paid on the 21st day of the month. That is when it is due to be filed and paid. You can file your VAT on the 3rd of July in respect of June, and you may decide not to pay. But your payment is due on 21st. You may file your income tax, company income tax, in June 30th, 2024. That is when that tax is also due to be paid. You might file it in March and you may not pay. No problem. When you want to pay, you can go and generate your payment receipt number and you go to pay either online or in the bank. You will not have penalty to deal with. But when you reach the due date that the tax must be paid, must be filed, it must be filed on that day, and the payment has to come on that date. Otherwise, you will pay penalty. But if you have agreed that you are going to be paying it installment, you have to pay the first installment on or before the due date. And not exceeding 3 installments. It has to be 3 installments. They didn't say 3 equal installments. It could be an agreement that, okay, you pay 20% the first payment, 50% the second payment, then maybe the last one is 30%, whichever, that is the agreement. It could be said that you can pay it in 3 equal installments, that's fine. Self-assessment for individuals. The self-assessment must be submitted at the beginning of every assessment year, and it should state the various sources of income and allowances and relief claimable. Now, some people usually say, I am employed by my organization. My company filed tax for me because they deduct it at source. But that is not all. You, as a taxpayer, you need to file your own individual tax. You need to state all the sources of income that is coming to you. Employment income is there. You may be a landlord and you have rental income. You may be a director of a company and you may have dividend income. You may have given out a loan to a company or a business and you are getting interest income. These are sources of income. You may have inherited a will and you are getting, royalty income and all that. You need to state all of these. What are the allowances that you can claim? You have your um, Consolidated Relief Allowance, CRA. You have your pension relief. You you have your gratuity, you have your health insurance, you have your housing fund, you also have life assurance. All these are reliefs that you must claim if they're applicable. And it is relevant to note that the tax payments to both FIRS and SIRS are now made via e-payment at designated banks or from the taxpayer office. So you see here, the e-payment has reduced the level of communication with the tax authorities. Previously, let me give you my experiences. Previously, in 2020, when I was practicing in an audit firm, I used to go to tax offices. I will go to the one at Ilupeju, go to the one at Marina, I'll go to Lekki, I'll be going different places just to ensure communication. But now, because we are not filing in the office, I've even gone to different states to go and file. But because now you're not filing in the offices, you are filing online, it has reduced your travel time, it has reduced calling on the phone, and even now, you can also, it has reduced sending email, sending WhatsApp message. It has reduced all of these. So that's good. We talked about best of judgment. Now, where a taxpayer fails to file uh, self-assessment and pay the normal tax within the time frame under the law, a best of judgment will be raised on the affected taxpayer. Now, whenever a best of judgment is raised, it must be um, objected to within 30 days. If in 30 days there is no objection to that best of judgment, then it means that that assessment is valid. There's a language being used. They said it is final and conclusive. Now that best of judgment is a punishment for the taxpayer, sort of, for failing to do the needful of filing self-assessment. And so they will now raise what they think should be what the taxpayer is supposed to pay. And when they serve you this notice, they will want you to pay within 30 days. But these days now, FIRS will be telling you pay within 14 days. Some will tell you pay within 7 days. Now, you may need to state your objection in writing within 30 days. Otherwise, it's not valid. Now look at, okay, I said objected within 30 days, right? But you need to pay within 60 days. A best of judgment assessment is to be paid within 60 days. The first 30 days is for objection. If there's any objection, it should be raised within 30 days. After that, they come to an agreement or to settle the objection. If no objection is being raised, the next 30 days is when the payment should be done. Look at an example of best of judgment assessment. Although I also have one for real life, but for security reasons, I will not show that. Objection to best of judgment assessment. ABC Limited is a trading company which has been operating in Nigeria for over 10 years. The company is duly registered for both income and VAT and has been filing returns regularly. Unfortunately, the company's accounts for the year ended 31st December 2021, is it 20, okay, 2018, 20, is it 2017? Yeah, 2017 could not be signed by the directors until 1st August 2018. when the managing director returned from his medical trip. Let's hold on here. A company's account ending in 31st December 2017 is supposed to have been filed, okay, prepared, signed, audited, filed, and the tax paid on or before June 30th, 2018, right? But they could not sign it until August 1. So it is past the, the deadline. Now they have stated the reasons. Now look at it is the company that is objecting, stating the reasons why they object. That the board of directors could not sign, the directors could not sign it until August 1, when the managing director returned from his medical trip. A best of judgment assessment for 4.5 million was served on the company with date of service of 30th July 2018. So from this statement, it is like one day before the managing director came, they have served them. The tax consultant filed and paid for self-assessment on August 2, 2018 as follows. So you see here, this self-assessment that they are supposed to have done in June latest, they did it in August 2 after they have signed in August 1. And look at what they paid. Income tax 2.75 million, education tax 260,000. The tax authorities impose a late return penalty LRP of 25,000 on the company thereafter. Required. As a tax consultant with many years of experience, write a suitable letter of objection to the best of judgment assessment to the tax office. So this is the peculiarity of the case. This is how the case is. What are you going to write? So this is how the question is going to be coming, that you are a tax consultant. So you are seeing here now that this is taking you from the skills level to a professional level. Now look at your suggested solution here. You are writing, this is the date. As I said before, because it's FIRS, you are writing to the tax controller. So remember that Federal Inland Revenue Service, they didn't tell you the address, so you can choose any address. But if they give you the address where the office is located, you need to use the address of the tax office there. You can just formulate anyone. Now look at, they said no shaking way, Ikeja. Dear sir, ABC Limited. So what's the name of the company? ABC Limited. As you are writing the name of the company, can you see here the TIN is also written. Now the TIN, since it's a professional class, you should know that a TIN is a 10 letter, a 10 digit. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's supposed to be 10, 9, 10. It's a 12 digit, sorry, 12 digits, 12 digits. So this should be 8 here. So this is the main thing. Is the main thing here. Now this 0001, I don't know what it is. It's a kind of code. You must always quote it. So you see here now, the name of the company on top, the thing is down. Sometimes what some companies do here is they will write the name of the company, they'll open a bracket, they'll put the ROC number, they'll come under and they'll put the TIN number. It shows that you are writing professionally and you know what you are doing. All right. Objection to the best of judgment assessment. Now you can just forge any assessment, this thing here, and it's fine. Now this is YCA 111 2008 1. You could just forge anything. You may not write that if you, it doesn't matter. But if you are used to practicing it, you may just need to write something. Now it is dated 30th July 2018 for 4.5 million. We write to raise a formal objection to the above quoted best of judgment assessment of 4.5 million raised on our clients named above ABC Limited for 2028 assessment year. Now, take note, assessment year and year of account year end are two different things. If you look at the question here, the company's end of accounting year is 30th December 2017. So you could say this is 2017 financial year. When it comes to tax language, financial year is the accounting year when you are preparing the account. For tax, we look at year of assessment. Which year are they assessing it? They are assessing it 1 year after your financial year. So it means that they are assessing it in 2018 year of assessment. And they are looking at what happened the previous year, which is your financial year. So take note, 2018 assessment year. Now, our grounds for objections are as follows. 1, our client has been a good corporate taxpayer and has been meeting its tax obligations over the years. So if that is something that your client has been doing, from this question, it was not stated here, but you may need to assume that in exam. And the reason why this person failed to meet it is because of a medical trip. So you could assume that he's been doing that over the years and has not failed. So you can put that. Now, the company's accounts were audited in time but could not be signed by the director until the end of 2018 due to the ill health of the managing director. Photocopies of his medical report for treatment received in Toronto are attached for your perusal. So they have evidence that he really traveled. You may even have his flight tickets going and coming, his passport. This is also medical trip. So you have evidence that is for even health purposes. So you cannot do anything, you cannot evaluate, you cannot do anything until he's fine. And the best of judgment was served on the company a few days ago. The tax return and self-assessment form and payment for income tax, education tax, and late return payments were submitted to your office. Of course, the fact that you failed to pay your tax in time, you must pay your penalty. So you cannot come and say you are objecting to the penalty. No, you must pay the penalty because you failed to file on time. But what you are objecting to is the original tax you are going to pay. They said income tax and education tax is put at 4.5 million. This without objection, the late returns penalty. Now you are objecting that you cannot pay 4.5, that you want to pay what you have filed on your self-assessment. That's why you now said here that your tax returns, self-assessment form, and payment for income tax, education tax, and late returns penalty were submitted to your office. But now you can say submitted via Tax Pro Max on the date of submission. See copies attached for ease of reference. Okay? We will be grateful if you would discharge the best of assessment of 4.5 million on compassionate grounds. and substitute with the self-assessment returns for 2.75 million based on the income tax computations already filed. Yours sincerely, this is a very good letter. I wrote something similar for a client. But these days now, because it is Tax Pro Max, uh, sometimes I don't know if it is a Tax Pro Max thing that has already been sent through the system, it may require you to do some, they may require to do some backdoor adjustments so that um, this plea could be entertained. Otherwise, if it is hosted on Tax Pro Max, this 4.5, that is what will be paid. So what happens here is that the company will not host it on Tax Pro Max. They will send you a best of judgment, and when you fail to object, then it will not be hosted on Tax Pro Max as the final tax and you must pay it. Okay? But when you object like this and the 2.7 million has been looked at and is accepted, you will now be hosting it, they will now host it on Tax Pro Max, where you will now be required to pay it within the period specified. All right. Now look at the tax queries. Tax queries and tax replies. I said before that tax queries comes from desk examination. So there's what they call desk examination, which we might even say is the younger brother to desk audit. So a desk examination is carried out by the tax official. Whenever you file a tax, they will examine it at their desk. And when they examine it, they will do a desk examinations. The returns are examined, supporting documents are requested for to ascertain whether the principle of REN, I call it REN, W, R, E, and N, wholly, I usually call the wholly and reasonably first, wholly, reasonably, exclusively, and necessarily incurred in the production of this income. That is, if your expenses satisfy the REN principle, and that if your income has not been understated, and if your relief and expenses are not overstated. How can an income be understated? It can be understated when you omit an income. Maybe you fail to put all your bank statements, you just only released one, and maybe you have 4 bank statements and incomes are coming there, you release one. The other ones from the 3 are understated because you will not record them in your financial statement and it will affect your tax liability. So they may have intelligent report that what you are saying your revenue is not true. So they will want to examine to see whether it is so. Your expenses, do they meet REN? For example, donations. Is donation an allowable expense? If you have allowed it, they might disallow it until you provide evidence that it is to an allowable organization like ICAN or charity organization, then it will be allowed. Then you look at miscellaneous expenses, general provisions, and you didn't disallow them. They would disallow it and add them back. Or you say you have some expenses and they're looking at these expenses that this is too much. Like There was a time for they were querying a company that I was consulting for toiletries expense and some utilities, and they wanted evidence that these are incurred and wholly, reasonably, exclusively, necessarily incurred for the company. We now wrote to them in reply telling them that a company of this caliber should be able to have these expenses of that magnitude based on the number of people that comes in there. And these are some of the expenses that are not receipted for. Where will you be getting tissue paper, receipts to show them? So some of these things are not receipted for, and the expense is reasonable, and they allowed it. So tax query may not follow any specific pattern, but a tax practitioner must have a better understanding of the taxpayer's operation and possess adequate technical know-how with relevant field experience. So the following questions may be raised from related documents. Collect private or content. Um, I don't know if
This meeting is being recorded.
okay. Let me share my screen again. Notice my screen was not being shared. Can you confirm that you can see my screen now?
Yes, yes. You can see it.
All right.
Yes.
All right. So now there are some things that we need uh, to verify whether for any expense or for assets and liabilities and income and expenditure, is there a supporting document? For example, you are claiming that you have an asset. Let's say the asset is generating machine. You know you will be claiming capital allowance. Is there any supporting document to show that this asset exists? You will be collecting initial allowance, annual allowance. You have to verify that. These liabilities, any supporting document, income. What is a supporting document for this income? You are claiming that you have not hit 25 million. The tax authority is saying we feel that you have 100 million. What is the supporting document? Your bank statement. Expenditure. You say you have transport. You took flight. What is the supporting document? You traveled interstate. What is the supporting document? That's why sometimes some people prefer to use Uber and other things where they can pay online and get supporting documents. You said you make telephone recharge, telephone expenses. Some people prefer to use their bank app to make all these expenses so that they can have supporting documents. Now, you will need to ask whether private expenses were included in the account. For example, did you withdraw money for private use? So that should not be part of the expenses. Did you pay rent and the rent is for your house instead of your office? Okay, so sometimes some expenses might be used both for official purposes and for private purposes. What is the percentage of official purpose? Let's say, for example, Go Getter Professional Consult is the the office address is the house address, and he's using, let's say he's using his parlor as his office. Okay? Now, when you pay rent for the house, will you call it rent for office or is it rent for house? What is the percentage of the rent attributable to office? So you may need to look at where you occupy as your office. If it is half of the house, half of it. If it is one quarter or one third, you accept that as office expense. The rest is private. So it means that the one that is allowable should be the part that is for official use. So the ones that is for private is excluded. You have to ascertain whether relevant documents such as certificate of acceptance, input VAT invoices, supporting invoices, premium claims, invoices on administrative and operating expenses have been collected. Some of these relevant documents could be invoices, receipts. Do you have them, or are you giving estimates? Sometimes estimates may not suffice and they may want to disallow. Whether payee deducted from salaries and withholding tax are promptly remitted. Sometimes when you are dealing with these tax authorities, they want to see you, like the one they asked me recently, to show evidence of payment of rent and withholding tax, payment of payee of salary from salaries, payment of withholding tax from suppliers and professional fees. They will be asking for that. They will be asking you whether you'll be asking whether capital expenditure in the form of increase in capital or incorporation expenses have been added back to the net profit in order to determine your assessable profit. You know, all these things here in number E are disallowable expenditures. So we need to add them back, because when you are preparing your financial statement, you deducted them to get your net profit. But the taxman is saying, no, I don't need your net profit. I'll get something called accounting profit. An accounting profit, I need to add back those expenses that does not agree with tax rules. Then you also check whether losses and carry forward rules have been adequately observed. In losses, which you will learn soon, there's what they call current year loss and carry forward loss. You need to check whether these rules have been observed. So these are some of the things you may need to check. Then in your reply, you reply, tax practitioners should endeavor to be ethical and use professional language as much as possible, right? Sometimes you may need to quote decided cases or tax laws or scenarios when you are making your submissions. All right. The tax consultant should not be seen to be involved in any practices which will be construed as tax evasion, fraud, or outright criminality. Let me give you an example. In one of the companies I was consulting for, they are asked to pay VAT and consumption tax. And I told them I will give them the correct position. They said no, they're not going to pay what I asked them to pay because it's too much. And I told them that VAT is charged based on revenue. But they said no, they want to use it on profit. And I said that is not the correct way. So I will not be seen to be aiding them to do that. I will tell them this is the correct position of the law. But if they say no, this is what we want to do, I will help them and file it in their name. So, but I will not be seen to be engaged in any practices that will be termed tax evasion. Then there are other communications with other stakeholders, which involves communication with former consultants, tax consultants, or auditors. You need to know what happened before you are coming in. Why are they going out? What is the relationship between these people and the company, so that you want to plan your assignment. Okay, you need to check if these people are this new client that you are undertaking, if they are known to owe their tax consultants or their auditors. Do they have any disagreement? You need to obtain relevant background information on this new assignment before you plan for it. Then we have communication with others. It could be for bank, you need to collect their bank statement, you need to talk to the insurance, pension fund administrators, lawyers. These are other people that you may need to consult and communicate with. Then, what are the documents that should be maintained by the tax consultant or the client? These are some of these here. We need certificate of incorporation, that's the CAC document, the MEMAT association, memorandum of association of article of association, the increase in share capital, including stamp fees, registration fees. We have financial matters, which include audited financial statement, book of accounts, trial balances, fixed asset register and title documents. Some fixed asset register, but it's good. Payment vouchers, bank and cash transaction documents, payroll. These are other things, taxes, tax clearance certificates, and also non-financial documents should be kept, including appointment letters. Now look at documents to be maintained by the tax consultant. Many of these things maintained by the client is also maintained by the tax consultant, because sometimes either the accountant or the tax consultant, if it's an accountant, may be the ones preparing some of these things for them. What are some of the risks of running a tax practice office? Some of the risk is lack of expertise. Lack of expertise may result to tax practitioners giving errors when they are giving advice on technical tax matters. For example, you are opening a tax office just like a goal-getter. Goal-getter is a tax practitioner. But if you are not good in transfer pricing or in base erosion and profit shifting or in petroleum profit tax matters, you should not venture into that because you lack expertise. Only practice the one that you have expertise. It's just like a law firm. Not every law firm can handle every case. Some are criminal law, some are customary law, some are different kind of maybe civil law and all that. You take what is you can give expert. Lack of attention to detail in owning a tax practice office. And if lack of attention to details occur, you will also be held liable to penalties. Lack of documentation, failure to maintain proper documentation, proper working papers will make you, negligent. All these are your working tools. Unpredictable income for owners. Income from owners are unpredictable. And so a company that may be doing well financially and you are getting your major pay from them may start doing badly, and that may also become a risk. What are some of the things that you may do to mitigate or reduce the risk? One, work only on areas where you are competent. Let me give an example. For example, go-getter ICAN class can only take advanced tax, PM, and taxation, or MI. These are the four courses that go-getter ICAN class can take for now. So go-getter will not be taking case study or CRO because that is not his area of expertise, or SFM. So he will not say, oh, I can cover everything. No, I cannot do everything. Work on only what you can do. Tax practitioners will avoid a lot of errors or liability if they take only what they are competent for and refer or outsource what they cannot do to other specialists. Then we need to implement quality control system, which will help you to avoid common pitfall and manage your risk. Then you should also use a checklist. A checklist is also very, very good, especially when you want to do audit, or maybe, let's say, for example, you are undertaking a tax consulting for a firm. You have a checklist. What are some of the things you are going to be doing for them? Filing CIT, when is the due date? VAT, when is the date to be filing them? And as you are doing them, you are marking them off. Then implementation of a task and deadline tracking system. Some of this deadline tracking system could be in the form of Google Calendar, Google Reminders to initiate tasks and deadline for you. Then follow up client acceptance practices, documenting all material advice in writing. Do not just say that phone calls suffice. Person like me, after we make our phone call talk, we will put it down in writing. For example, just today, I put my VAT computation and recommendation to my client in writing. I will not just say, please pay this. No, all these are my working tools, working papers. Invest in education. Some of this education could be attending webinars, attending workshop, classes to learn, then obtain professional valuation. All of these are important. What are some of the benefits of running a tax practice? We have, you own your own schedules and rules. You work whenever, wherever, and whomever you want to work for. Financial benefits, you are your own boss. You are making your own profit, and you can pick your own team by yourself. So you can pick your own team, you can pick your own client. You can say, I don't want to work with this team, don't want to work for this client. You create your own vision and all of that. So these are some of the things you will be seeing. I would like you to read some of these um, parts. For example, the tax code of ethics. You need to know that the tax authorities, now this is not the tax consultant now, the tax authorities, what are their code of ethics? Now this code of ethics should also be abided by the tax consultant. There should be disciplined, there should be loyalty, honesty, and courage. They should also be tactful when dealing with the, the client or the taxpayer. Then we have confidentiality. Confidentiality has to do with not revealing what somebody you learn from a taxpayer, one taxpayer to another. Confidentiality. Then sometimes confidentiality may be disclosed when it is in the best interest of the society, when it is permitted by law, when the taxpayer has committed a crime and all that. It is, and when some regulatory bodies require that such uh, the confidentiality information is revealed, especially when they are doing some investigation or so on a member that is having their certificate. Then there's conflict of interest. Taxpayer or tax practitioner should not act for two opposing parties. Okay, it's just like tuition houses. You cannot be working for one tuition house and be working for another tuition house that is a competitor. It's conflict of interest. The same thing with a tax practitioner. We need to look at where your loyalty lies, because if you're working for two opposing parties, you may have conflict of interest. So that's not good. So what should a tax practitioner do when there is a conflict of interest? Uh, you will need to resolve it. I would like you to look at you do when there is a conflict of. So so far so good. Time is well spent. We have looked at the process of tax consultant engagements. We've seen that there will be um, an engagement letter stating the scope of the job that you are going to. There's going to be an offer letter, there's going to be an acceptance letter, and there's going to be an introduction of the tax consultant.
Hello.